Hi everyone, this is Kia tuning in to you from Venice, California, my home of a long time. Wow, it's really nice to have an opportunity to share with you all. Those of you who know me know that I'm quite a yoga nerd, and I love the practice, I love the philosophy, I love how empowered it makes us as human beings when we start to integrate the philosophy of yoga and live it in our everyday life. And that is the mission, if you like, the title, the intention behind this webinar. It's to share how we can make yoga part of our everyday life. So I'd like you to get a pen and paper, because I'm going to be asking you some questions so that you can evaluate yourself and make notes on things that you can do to refine the way that you are being in your life, so that you can begin to bring different levels of consciousness and awareness to yourself and to your interactions with others and the world. So hi Simone Dixon and Nancy Kawashima. Satnam to you and all of those of you who are joining us live here today. I'll try to keep up if you have any questions at the end, so I'll ask you then. So those of you who are on, if you have something that you can write on, that would be amazing. Oh, I think I just saw my sister Rowan. That's incredible. And Daphne, wow. Hi, Daphne. And Heather Milligan. Oh, so nice to connect with you all. What a joy. What a real pleasure. Yay. So, my underlying intention here is to share skills and practices that, when implemented, will allow you to integrate these principles of yoga into your daily life, and really to bring about more harmony and connection. The way I see it, those of us who are living a yogic lifestyle, we have the capacity to shift the collective consciousness in this time. We have the capacity to actually lead by example, not by trying to change people's minds, not by joining one side of the big polarity that's going on in the world right now, or by hopping onto the confusion bandwagon, but actually we have the capacity as yogis to truly lead. This is our time to show how, when we implement the kinds of things that I'm going to share with you on this webinar, when we implement these things, we can actually be a lighthouse for those around us. We can be a living example of how we can live in harmony, and how we can live as non-reactive human beings, how we can become accountable to ourselves, how we can become more self-reflective and self-corrective. So if you're watching here, my call to action to all of you is, at every level that you can, implement these very wise teachings of the saints and sages who have gone before us, that when implemented, give us the capacity to really live as loving, compassionate beings. It doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, but the more in alignment we can be, the more we act in correct integrity with ourselves and others, then the more we lift that vibration for the collective. So if you're watching this, thank you, and let's do this together. We have the power to do this together and to be the vehicles of change and of light in this world. So really, I guess I already covered my next point for you guys, which is why I think this topic is so important. I think it's very important that all of us understand and that we communicate to others that yoga is not just a practice that happens on your sticky mat. It's not just a practice that happens in a yoga studio. That is but a very small part of the practice. That's us being in community. That's us coming into alignment in our physical body, which I'll speak a little bit more about later, and creating practice with the breath. But the real yoga, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's skill in action. How do we become really skillful in our actions? So that's part of what I'll be covering here in this webinar. And once you start to implement these practices, some of you will be implementing them at certain levels already. For others of you, this may be new. But as soon as you start to implement these very key and some of them very simple practices, you will see how they shift your life and your engagement with yourself, with others in the environment. And so I think that these practices actually ultimately speak for themselves. So my call out again is this practice of yoga is giving us the keys that all of us need to up level. Let's up level, you guys. Let's not fall into the apathy of old habits, into the misconception of thinking that we are just these bodies, or the misconception of thinking that we are less than or not capable of extraordinary things, because I believe that we are, and the yoga tradition continuously points to the practices, the systematic practice of yoga that is on the mat and off the mat, how this leads us to a greater and greater understanding of ourselves, how this leads to a greater unveiling of our potential and our ability to access true power. And from that power, we can create the change that is so needed in our world right now. Yay! So, up level. Some of you liked that word. Great. I do too. Let's up level, you guys. So yoga says, first look within, right? First look within. Create a relationship with the unseen. I'll go more into what this really means. We're so used to identifying ourselves when we see our reflection from the world around us. And yet creating that true relationship with our inner identity and starting to recognize our imbalances, our outmoded beliefs, and transforming them. And in doing so, as we transform the collective. It's just, think of that. Anything we do is affecting the collective. The more of us that do this right now, the more we impact it and we affect it and we create the change that in our hearts we're all longing for. So stay tuned, because this is what we'll be covering, to be more specific here. The yogic understanding of who we are as human beings and how to use yoga to establish a foundation for a healthy mind and a healthy body. One of the big maladies that we're seeing in the world right now is that people are wavering on this edge between feeling quite sane and quite insane, between feeling stable and highly unstable. And the unstable part is very wrought with suffering. And so we see a lot of suffering. We see a lot of lives lost too early. And so we want to understand ourselves and create this healthy mind-body connection and help others to do the same. So the number one thing that we'll cover here is our understanding of ourselves as human beings and how to establish this healthy foundation for mind and body. Number two is we're going to look at key questions. Here's where I want you to have your pen and paper. Key questions to ask yourself that will help you to identify where you are living in alignment, but also where you can improve. And this brings us to the third part, which is where I'll share key practices that help us to create this optimal relationship with ourselves and therefore with the world around us. And then lastly, I want to cover why I feel regularity in practice and regularity in our approach to living a yogic life is so important. Again, this is not something that we just go to a studio once a week and do. This is a daily mindfulness practice, if you like, of being all that we can be, and using all the wide range of yogic technology, if you like, yogic skills to create the balance that will serve that greater purpose. So let's look at point 1 here first. And this is the yogic understanding of who we are. And this is important because I know for myself, before I came into contact with yoga, I understood that I'm a physical being. I understood that there's a mind. But I was quite identified with my mind and my thoughts. I didn't understand myself as an energetic being. And I was aware of the soul, but I didn't have the skill set to really understand how to connect with that soul. Although I think that many of us are doing that anyway, but it's helpful, I think, to understand that the yogis created and delineated systematic approaches to doing all of it. So we look at the yogic perspective on the human being. We have the physical body, we have the energetic body, we have the mental, emotional body, and then we have really the soul body, you could say, and the levels of awareness. And there's different dimensions to each one of these, obviously. The physical body, we're all so used to, because it's what we relate to on a daily basis. It's what we see reflected in others' eyes. So that as they're witnessing us, or at least as we are witnessing them witnessing us, it's the projection of what that we think that they are seeing. And when we're related to the physical body, that's just an interesting one, isn't it? When we so many of us have so many inadequacies that we associate with our physicality, and what a chain that is really to our consciousness when we're limiting ourselves to just this idea of this shell of what we are, this physical body. So we'll go more into that. And all of these different bodies, but the physical body, obviously, it is what we relate to most. It is what we work with in the asana practice in the yoga studio, when we learn how to align our bodies, to open up the joints, to strengthen the muscles, to create physical stability and strength and openness. And so that's the major part of the yoga practice that relates to the physical body. And the other part is diet. And I'll talk more about that when I get into the sort of individual questions for you. But there's no mistake, we are what we eat. And a big part of yogic philosophy is around food. And here's the up level on this. We have to take a new level of responsibility as to what we put in our bodies. It matters. It matters to this organism, and it matters to the organism that we call our Mother Earth. It matters that we buy sustainable organic produce that is not putting more chemicals on the earth and into our bodies and other people's bodies. It matters that we support the farmers that are committed, and they're going against the grain in order to deliver us the highest quality products that we can. So there's reasons for ourselves that we might want to make a choice, and there's reasons for supporting others. I know it's not always the easy choice, and if you're living somewhere in the world and organic food is not available, I understand. And we just do what we can to find the healthiest food that's closest to the source. If you can locate the farmers, if you can buy from the farmers, fantastic. Eat locally, all those good things. This really matters. It matters to the functioning of our body, so we don't get caught in the heaviness and intensity of digestion. And it matters to our energetic body, which I'll speak to next, which is all about our vibrancy and having the energy and the vitality that we need to fulfill our destiny in this life. So physical body, asana, food, etc. The energetic body, this is the thrilling part to me. When I understood myself as an energetic being, it changed my whole paradigm. I came to understand myself as connected to the entirety of the cosmos. When I look at myself as a physical being, I can see the delineation of me and the space around me, and I can see the separateness, if you like. When I experience myself as an energetic being, I can experience that the energy that reverberates through me, that fuels me, actually permeates out beyond my physical body. And I'll share a practice with you guys later that will help you to actually sense that for yourself. There's a lot of information being shared through this energy body. If that energy is dull, if it's in an inert state in our being, then we will tend to be dull, uninspired, more ignorant about ourselves, less clear in our communications, a lot more confused, etc., etc. So we need to, as yogis, we need to learn how to keep our energy in a balanced place. Don't let it get too inert. Don't let it get too active, where it takes us into being overly ambitious in our approach to life, which then has its, payback. So our up level on the energetic level is to learn how to cultivate balance, to shift and move our energy so that we can expand our perception of ourselves and start to feel more into the interconnectedness of life. Really, the simplest, most profound way to do that is to step outside into nature. Ground your feet in the earth. I've been doing this as a practice today because I feel like I'm being challenged in my life right now to stay grounded and rooted and firm in who I am, and yet also flexible. So I liken it to the palm trees here in California. They have the roots that allow them to grow really tall, but they sway in the wind. If they were to be too rigid, they would fall down. So that's my practice energetically here, to be strong and stable, but yet also fluid. And we'll talk more about this again when I go into the personal questions for you in the next section. So still on point one here, the yogic understanding of who we are. The mental, emotional body. This is such an interesting one because when we understand that we are all of these different dimensions, if you like, then we can more easily detach from over-identification from any one of them. And I think what many of us do in this world is we get attached to our intellect. We get attached to our mind. We get attached to our opinions and our beliefs. And lo and behold, if you counter my beliefs or my opinions, or if you have an opinion that's the opposite to mine, well, then we'll just butt heads. And that's what we're seeing in the world right now. A lot of, big characters butting heads, and it's a clash of ideas. It's a clash of beliefs, and it's people getting stuck in the intellectual understanding of life and not able to connect to the purity of their hearts and the understanding of from the heart consciousness. And one of my greatest definitions of yoga, as given by Nishala Joy Devi in her book on the Yoga Sutras, called The Secret Power of Yoga, I believe. She says that yoga is the uniting of consciousness in the heart. And that actually, when we are truly living as evolved, elevated beings, we're not directing our life from the level of the intellect anymore. We're using the mind to serve the greater information in the soul and the heart. So we're looking for this uniting of consciousness in the heart. That's the goal here. So we'll talk more about your relationship to your mind a little later. And the emotional body, if you like, tends to be aligned with the mind, because the mind will hop onto a certain bandwagon, and before we know it, the emotions have joined in, and now we have like the nuclear power of intensity inside of our being that we're trying to figure out, that can often have the power to actually overwhelm us, like that tidal wave through our being, that when it's not only we get overwhelmed by negative thinking or obsessive thinking, but then we have a whole bunch of emotions loaded onto that. And it seems sometimes to many that this is an impenetrable state, that it's so hard to lift out of. And I think that's why so many people end up in depression, and that kind of fluctuating, as I mentioned earlier, between feeling, okay and really not okay. And so it's imperative, actually, that all of us start to create a really good, right relationship with our mind and our emotions, and understanding that truly the purpose of the mind is to serve the soul. It is not that we become slaves of our beliefs, our limiting beliefs from the most part, and our ideas and our polarized thinking. The mind works in contrasts, but the heart works in that perspective of unity. So that's really what we're looking at, and we'll go a little more into that. Then the final level that I want to talk about of this yogic understanding of who we are, it's a level of consciousness, of a pure awareness, and that really is very close to the soul. So recognizing that we are so much more than the small identities that we've taken on, that we have limited ourselves to. And the key yogic practice is to really tune into that sense of self, sense of soul. And one of the clearest ways that I've learned to discern that little quiet voice of the soul is to really listen to what I would refer to here as the voice of your conscience. Listen to that little voice in you that knows what move to make, when to make it, how to make it. What happens to us is that we get caught in the weight of habit or in the weight of cultural and familial norm. And so we negate that little voice of the soul. And when we do that often enough, it just gets softer and softer. And then we start to seek outside approval. We start to seek answers from the outside. Whereas all along, it's right here in your being. That's the essential teaching of yoga. Remember that and act from that place of your inner knowing. And here's the kicker on this, if you like. When you start to live from the voice of your soul, you will encounter resistance. Because you have to, really, because you're going to encounter your own resistance to doing something different. You're going to encounter potentially the resistance of those around you. And yet it's that friction that we come up against that starts to polish the diamond of who we are. And this is an essential teaching in yoga. We have to be willing to step into those shoes of the rebel, if you like, the one who is willing to take risks because you trust. You so learn to trust the inner voice of your soul that you won't compromise anymore. You won't compromise yourself. Every time you take a step of listening to that inner voice, you strengthen that core relationship between you, and you make it so that you are much less influenced by the voices and the opinions and the beliefs of those around you. And you start to create a relationship of direct experience because you've listened to that inner voice and you've acted upon it and you understand it. And so that is a great call here on that deep level, to know ourselves at that deepest level, to trust ourselves at that deepest level, and to become conscious and aware of where we're living from the weight of conditioning of our parents and our society and the world at large, and be willing to be different and to not do what you have always done. So that, I think, is an essential part of what I want to communicate here today. So let's see, to keep us. So if you and if you stay tuned for specifics here, so I've kind of talked conceptually now about the perception from yoga of our being, of our human beingness, the totality of who we are, this idea that true yoga is this synchronization, this integration of the body, of the energy, of the mind, emotional and soul aspect of our being, that we cultivate a state of true integration on all those levels of our being. And obviously, in order to do that, it's a step-by-step process to unravel the ways that we have lost that deep core connection with those levels of our being. So let's look here at point 2. And this is where these are the questions for you, right? Questions for you. So you have pen and paper handy. So key questions to ask yourself that help identify where you are living in alignment and where you can improve. So here are the 3 themes that I've been playing with. How is my awareness of different parts of my being? So awareness is a key one. In fact, you know, in all of yoga, we're working on cultivating deeper levels of awareness. So awareness, and then how is my relationship to each part of my being? So what's my awareness of myself on the physical, energetic, mental, emotional, I can hear you guys answering for me, and soul level. How is my awareness of myself? How is my relationship to each one of those? And where's the possibility and the potentiality for transformation on all of those levels? So that's what where we're going here to next. So let's look at the relationship to the body. And awareness of your body. So how aware are you of your body? Do you spend long periods of time where you are not in awareness of your body? You know, for example, sitting at a desk for many hours a day, or when you're living in your mind, when you're living in high levels of stress, we tend to be much more identified with the mental level of our being than the physical level. And then the physical level starts to pay the price. So where are you at in terms of awareness of your body? And so look at your physical condition, whether you're holding stress in your being right now, whether you feel quite calm, and if your body feels vibrant, as in, you know, strong, connected, balanced. And then look at yourself, your awareness of what you're eating. How's your eating lately? How are you fueling this body of yours? What are you fueling it with? Are you fueling it with caffeines and high intensity foods to try to keep pushing yourself the next level? And this kind of comes in to the level of energy as well, which we'll cover in a moment. But this is very important. Because in terms of the next level, which is relationship to body, do we see our body as our friend, or do we see our body as our enemy or foe? Like, are we constantly trying to whip this body into shape? Are we demanding of it? Are we hard on it? Are we unkind to this body? Do we push ourselves too far? Or do we lack the connection with our body where we are not so connected? And so our relationship is one of dissociation from the physical body. So just a little sort of check-in with yourself on those levels. And then the third level with the body here is the possibility of transformation. What are you willing to implement to be in better balance when it comes to your body? So in your awareness, are you aware of yourself that you need to do more physical practice? Do you need to do less physical practice or less physical intensity? Because I know that's one of the things, particularly in certain levels of the yoga community where people are overdoing on the physical level. So just something to ask yourself. And then looking at the relationship with food and how pranic rich is your diet. And by that I mean is how much life force is in the food that you're eating. And obviously plants and vegetables are the most pranic rich foods that we can take into our bodies. And superfoods. So because of the degradation of a lot of our soils, and the way that a lot of farming has been happening, and then, you know, even organic farmers being affected by the cross-pollination from genetically modified crops, etc., etc. So, you know, how are you doing on that level with your food? And are you adding in superfoods that can actually help to support yourself nutritionally because of the lack of nutrition in some of the foods you may be doing? So anyway, there's a little checklist for you to tune into yourself as a physical being. I love the yogic philosophy of the body as a temple. And really all of the refined practices that we aim to do in yoga, you know, of cultivating deeper states of meditation, etc. If the physical body is not in a healthy state, it's really hard to access the more sublime, deeper, blissful, expanded places that yoga is inviting us to. So in essence, we have to start with the physical body, right? We have to start to come into that right relationship with ourselves, understanding how much food we need, not overeating, getting the right ingredients so that we're vital and healthy, cleansing when we need to, such an important thing. To detoxify the body from all the environmental pollutions and the environments that we find ourselves in, etc. So, yay, you guys, let's up level on the food so that we can be even more radiant beings. So then we come on to the energy body. How is your awareness of your energy? Do you feel often tired and dull, uninspired? Depressed. This is a huge one. Depression is like that subtle state that creeps in uninvited and unannounced. Like you find yourself in that state and you wonder, how did I get here? And you know, obviously there's many reasons why we could end up in that depressed state. But the key practice to remember here is that when energy is in an inert state, it is dull, it is uninspired, it does feel like we can't see our way through. But once we enliven energy and stabilize it, then the emotional mental body starts to shift and widen and expand also. So if we can, I'm going to share a practice coming that will help to enliven and move energy and open us up. So if you tend to be on that scale, there's a practice for you. And then on the other level, there's many of us who run around frantic and busy. And what we do is we create stress. We become overly ambitious in our capacity, and we keep taking on more things. And we want to go. And it's simply not sustainable. And what ends up is we start to max out the certain organs in the body. We start to max out certain hormones in the body. And very quickly, we start to pay the price on the physical, emotional, mental levels because we've overtaxed our energy. So these are the ways I want you to get really 100% honest with yourself. Where are you on that scale? What adjustments can you make? And what's your relationship to your energy here? Do you push yourself too hard? Do you fall into a more sort of apathetic state when things get challenging? And And where is the possibility for transformation for you? So which scale? If you are that super stressed, super busy person, cultivating quiet time, downtime with no technology is so key. Getting still in nature, getting still in your home, just sitting, coming present, coming into awareness of yourself, your energy, breathing, connecting to your heart. So you start to create that unification of consciousness in your heart. You start to draw pranic energy back into you. You see, if you're what I would like to call a pranic spender, if you're just constantly giving energy out and going after things, then you end up what would you call it? Like a shell. There's no energy left in here. It's all out. But the moment you bring your attention back into the sweetness of your own being, into your heart, into the quiet connection to yourself, the moment you do that, you start to draw all of that disparate energy back in, and then you move from a confused, dissipated state into a really connected, concentrated, present state. And that's where the true potential and creativity that we all thrive, especially those of us who are really type A go-getters, that's our resource. It comes from stillness, not movement. So anyway, there's a good one for you on the level of awareness and relationship and potentiality when it comes to energy. So let's look at the state of mind and emotions. So isn't this a big one? Especially when we get into, let's look at the mind. Do you get overcome by negative thinking, obsessive thinking? As I mentioned earlier, emotions get on board with that. The kind of emotions that can really trip us up if we're not being clear and accountable with our emotional self on a regular basis, especially in relationship, then we end up with blame, with resentment, then the flip side of that towards ourselves, the guilt, the shames. Those are very toxic emotions, as you know, we all understand, right? They're toxic emotions. And that on the emotional level happens when we're not, I find, when we're not accountable, when we're not keeping our relationships clear, when we're not speaking the uncomfortable stuff to another. That keeps us in integrity, that helps us to not harbor the resentments inside. And you know, the mind and the emotional body, they kind of feed each other here. So start to create a very conscious relationship with your mind. And again, it starts by obviously getting still and quiet. So take a moment now and just observe yourself. Get still, get quiet, and start to attune, tune in. What have you been thinking about a lot today? What's been the driving thought of your day? Is this a regular pattern for you in your thinking? How have you been thinking about yourself? What's your self-talk been like today? Have you been kind in your thoughts? Have you been judgmental to yourself, to others? And so you just start to observe without any self-judgment here, but just start to observe that landscape of your thoughts and understanding that there is a you that's witnessing the thoughts, and that even the most wise of sages has crazy thoughts pass through their consciousness. The only difference between them and us is that they don't act on them. So be aware that just because your thoughts may tend to be a little crazy at times, you're not alone. And the more you can start to identify with that which is witnessing the thoughts, the you that is witnessing the thoughts, and recognizing You are not that label you've just given yourself, or somebody else is not that label that you've just pigeoned them into. That we're much bigger, there's much more to us than that. Then we start to create a healthy relationship with our mind. And then the mind starts to have less of a hypnotic hold on our consciousness. And this is the work that is so essential, so that we don't get caught in the mass hysteria that is being reflected on our planet right now. We have to learn to unhook from the actual insanity of those thoughts, and start to perceive them as that, just thoughts. And then you may perceive some more helpful thoughts come into your field of awareness. And then you start to create a relationship with those helpful thoughts. And you start to create the ability to discern which thought you would rather give some energy to, as opposed to always going with that direction. Oh, wait, that direction hasn't really given me the results I want. I'm going to choose to think about this instead. It's so powerful when we create this level of relationship with our thinking. So this is a big one. So awareness of what thoughts are driving you on a day-to-day level. And mind you, a lot of these are unconscious thoughts, right? We're not aware really until we stop and become aware. So the key is to take enough moments in your day to check in with yourself. Ooh, what's driving this right now? Oh, come into awareness. You see, there's only one throne within yourself. You can either be in awareness or you can be in thought. You can't be in two places at the same time. So the moment you come into awareness, now you're not identified with thought. Boom, you've made that vital shift into that feeling of uniting at the heart. So thoughts. Just keeping myself on track here. So having awareness of them, and then your relationship to them. Okay, so do you try to avoid certain emotions and certain thoughts? Do you try to promote certain emotions and thoughts? Certainly if we're in the habit of promoting, we hope that they're good things that we're promoting. And ideally, we don't want to put energy to avoiding certain things, because that just energizes them and makes them more. But we want to just have that recognition. Oh, there's that negative thought again. Okay, wait, I don't have to focus on that. I'm going to go over here instead. So you start to create that relationship with them, as opposed to sitting there and, trying to bat away all of the thoughts that are bothering you, or trying to negate. Oh, this is a big one. Trying to negate an emotion that you have. And emotions are funny things. They, generally speaking, of course they pass, but we have to allow it to move through us. If we suppress it, then we create the toxicity. So allowing an emotion to flow through us, it doesn't mean that we act it out necessarily, but we also try not to avoid it. So I hope that makes sense in terms of how you're relating to yourself on a physical and mental level. And then lastly on this is your relation. So what's the potentiality here for transformation for you with your thinking and with your emotions? And what I would recommend is, if you don't already have it, meditate. Simply breath awareness, watching your breath, deep inhales, deep exhales, anchoring in the breath, anchoring even with a mantra. So hum, inhale, so exhale, hum, inhale, sat, exhale, nam. Start to anchor yourself inwardly with the breath, with the mantra, so that we become less identified with the thoughts, so that we start to expand our field of awareness and we can sense the thoughts in that realm. And what you can do in this practice is then, as I did with you guys a minute ago, just start to see which ones are predominant. And because the more aware you get of them, and the moment you identify them, the next time they come into your field of awareness, you'll be able to recognize them a lot more quickly. So start a practice of, coming into right relationship with your mind on a daily basis, and I'll talk more about that later. And start a practice, if you're not doing it already, of regularly clearing in your relationships with others on an emotional level, so that you don't start to harbor resentments or blame. In the moment you blame somebody else, there's something going on in you. So having that kind of recognition of how to work with yourself as an emotional being. It's very easy when we are in an emotional state to just want to point the finger and make it about something other than us. But the up level on this is to take 100% responsibility for yourself. And the moment we do that, we start to transform really quickly. And then that's when we start to access more potential. Great, so lastly now, we're going to look at ourselves in terms of soul. So one last thing I wanted to say in terms of the meditation and working with the mind is the importance of mantra. And I mentioned the soham on the breath, but if you're having one of those days and your mind seems to have gotten the best of you, chant a mantra out loud. Put it up full volume, blare it out if you can, and just chant along, and just guaranteed within very little time you will transform yourself mentally and emotionally. So start to use mantra as a tool to help you to do that, so we don't become a slave of the mind or the emotions. Great. So last one on this little section, and then I'll come into the practices for you guys. So awareness of your soul. How connected are you on a daily level to that little quiet but ever so sweet and loving voice of your soul? Again, as I mentioned earlier, of your conscience, if you like that voice. How connected are you to that? How much of your decision making is coming from that? And yes, Stephanie Alberts, you're saying here, befriend your soul. Yes, exactly. We want to befriend our soul. We want to come into that right relationship. And what's your relationship to it? Do you listen? As I referenced earlier, are you listening? Are you in a habit of listening to your soul? And one great little technique that I love when I feel like I need to remember that relationship, if I've been in a very busy outward mode, is I use little angel cards, or I use any of those fun little cards that you pick, that give you a little point of reference of something to focus on. And then you start to create, again, that little trustful relationship with yourself on that level. So a great little homework assignment is every day tuning into that little voice of your soul, of your conscience, and doing something that enhances that relationship. So that really would be the possibility of transformation with the soul level, is to listen to it and practice doing the things that you are resistant to doing, even if you know they're the right thing to do. Does that make sense? So when your little voice of your conscience says, I should do this, but you resist doing it because of whatever habit or conditioned behavior, but actually to go against your own inner resistance and do it anyway, wow, that's really strong yogic practice right there. That's how we start to cleanse the veils and discover the brilliance and the brightness of our being. So little recap here. So we've looked at the yogic model of the being, on all the different layers of our being, if you like, and we've looked at key questions that can help us to reveal where we're at in each dimension of this being. And now what I want to look at are some key practices to implement to create harmony in our life, in our relationships, and the environment around us. So practice number one, and I've mentioned this already, but just to reiterate here, practice number one, we have to move our body. We have to sweat, laugh, and pray every day, as they say. So we got to move this vehicle in order to keep it in an optimum condition. We can't be stagnant in it. We've got to move the body. We've got to stay strong. It doesn't mean that we have to be excessive. We've got to find that balance of what's enough exercise for us that can keep us in a state of true strength and health. And then what kind of practices are right for me at this time. And recognizing that if you used to practice in a certain way, it doesn't mean that that way is right for you where you're at in your life right now, depending on all the things that are going on. So you take into account everything that's going on in your life. You look at the amount of time you have in every day, but you do something every day for your body. If it's a walk on the beach, a stroll up the hill, or a fast hike, or a strong vinyasa class, or a kundalini class to really work on the energy levels as well. Whatever it is, find that ingredient and then be systematic and consistent with it. That's the key in keeping ourselves, integrated and healthy on the physical level. Doing a practice today and then not practicing again or moving again until this time next week, it's not really helping. It has to be a little bit more systematic, and yoga is all about being systematic and consistent. The little things done consistently over time create that change that we all desire. And our evolution is happening then on a day-to-day basis. And we're just flowering and blossoming in the most beautiful way. So moving our body, eating well, cleansing when we need to, doing a tapas, like a discipline of letting go of the things that we know are bad for us, like sugar, like excessive caffeine use. Just pay attention. Pay attention, because when we use these kinds of products, of sugar, of caffeine, it can make us lose that edge, because it's hard on the body. And we want to get to that place where our energy is primed, but we're open and receptive. Too much caffeine and we're driving, the heart center is more closed, we're driving, it gets more push. The sugar takes us on the roller coaster ride and really ends up depleting us energetically. Both of them end up depleting us energetically. So be wise in your choices, and keep looking at the long-term goal here of your overall radiance, and look at the short-term goal of, if we are really to affect some change in the collective, we have to be warriors at this time. And by that I mean we have to be willing to take accountability at the next level, so that we can really hold a certain vibration of light, a certain vibration of connection, so that we can be the lighthouse for those around us. That's really what's being asked of us as yogis at this time, I believe. And that's a dharma, if you like. That's something that we can fulfill when we're really taking care of ourselves. Practice number 2. I want you to keep your energy in balance. So the greatest tool that I know to do that is with breath of fire. And it's a form of Bhastrika, for those of you who are unfamiliar. You can do this whole thing with long, deep breathing, or you could do it with breath of fire, which I'll go into. So the first part is your arms are just down. So my hands are just down on my knees. And you're sitting and your eyes are closed, and you're either doing a long, deep breath, or you're doing breath of fire. Breath of fire is you're driving the power of the exhale with your navel point, drawing in and up. So you can pant like a dog, navel's coming in, and then close your mouth and still do it. You might need a tissue handy for you, like I did, when you do the breath of fire. So either long deep breathing or breath of fire. And the breath of fire, it's like a pendulum. This is the exhale. So it's swinging side to side. Exhale, little inhale, exhale, little inhale, exhale, little inhale. So your slight inhale, but the power is the exhale. So that's how we're going at the navel. And so you start with your hands on your knees. And you go for 2 minutes. 2 minutes here. And then you take your arms out to the sides. And my palms are just up like this. Arms are out to the side. Now you start to stabilize. You're building the energy at the navel point. You spend time there, you focus at the navel for 2 minutes with breath of fire, then you bring your arms out to the sides, and then you focus at the heart center with breath of fire, another 2 minutes, holding the arms strong and out. Then you bring the arms up to 60 degrees, and you focus at the third eye center here with the breath of fire, or long deep breathing. And what this does is it just starts to transform and lift your energy and move it out into the energetic field around you. And then that creates, it shifts the energy from an inert state. As soon as you awaken energy, it gets lighter, right? Gets lighter, and then it gets more expansive. So that's what we're doing. We're getting lighter and more expansive. Then you can visualize yourself surrounded by a circle of golden light. You can feel that protection that the energy gives to you, and you can focus on your own projection of love, of compassion, of whatever gratitude that you're working on that day. And I think that's just one of the most powerful tools to enliven energy, move us from an intellectually dominant state, start to awaken more consciousness in the heart center, and set ourselves up for success. So as a simple everyday tool, I highly recommend that. And then practice number 3. So practice number 1 was the body. Practice number 2 was that energy practice with the breath of fire or long deep breathing. Practice number 3 is to just become very mindful of not getting caught in your thoughts and coming into presence when that happens, and watching who is thinking, and breathe deeply until the intensity of the thought or the emotion passes. So this is your yogic skill that will help you to start to become more neutral, less polarized in your thoughts and in your emotions. When you get caught in a polar place, if you can't in that moment do the yes and, yes, I see this and I believe this, and I can also open myself to this perception, which is you then kind of being able to bridge the opposites. But if you're not able to do that in the moment, and sometimes we're just not, we get triggered by someone, we get triggered by a circumstance, and the emotion and the thought gets, strong very quickly, then you pause and you focus inwardly and you breathe. You breathe, you come into the center of you, and you start to ask yourself, who really is thinking this thought? Watch who's thinking. And then you can start to slowly release your grip on that identity that you've attached to the thought. And it's very powerful, just powerful. The simplest practices can be the most powerful. That's stopping, breathing, and especially if you're a parent, being able to model that to those around you. Okay, I'm challenged, I've been triggered. Wow, I really want to react in this moment. You know what? I'm just going to take 5. I'm going to sit, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to re-find my center. And maybe I won't choose to talk about this until I can really do it from a neutral place. And I think the moment we can become accountable on that level, then we start to stop that pattern. that is being passed from human being to human being to human being, especially in the media right now, that tendency to kind of just razzle everybody up in the drama of everything that's going on, and we just come back, we breathe, we come into center, we come into right relationship, and we make that conscious decision. I'm going to stay in a non-reactive state until I can respond with grace. Yay, there's the up level on that one. And then lastly here, you guys, is the practice 4, which is for your soul. So what I would say is that peace that I felt was missing in my life for so long, that kind of emptiness, well, yeah, life's great, but, but, you know, there's something's missing. In my experience, what's missing is actually a relationship to our core self, to our soul. And that when we have that, there cannot be anything missing in our life anymore, because we've created union between the small self, universal self, or higher self, small self, however you want to view that relationship. And something my husband said earlier, which I loved, he said, what we understand is there's a correlation between fulfillment, wholeness, contentment, and the cultivation of relationship with our inner self. To develop a relationship with this part of ourselves leads to a more complete, full, and blissful experience of life. So, if we want to access that true state of wholeness and right relationship, we have to begin with that most intimate of relationships, that most sacred of relationships, that one to the inner core of our being. So think about for a moment the last time where all thought stopped for you, where you were not thinking of something in the past or the future, but you were fully, truly experiencing yourself in the moment. When was the last time that happened for you? Where you were maybe looking at a tree or looking at the ocean and you were just feeling the pure joy of that. There wasn't some unconscious driving, motivating thing that was making you be out on your walk that day. I got to exercise, I got to be fit, or, you know, whatever it is in the moment, trying to figure out something in your mind while you're walking, but you just dropped into pure presence. Because those really, that's our natural state, to be in that pure state of presence. And so that really is, that's what we're calling on here. I just see my husband in the window outside the apartment here right now, speaking of him, which is perfect because we're starting to wind down. So to complete this here, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me. I've really enjoyed seeing all your little emojis coming up through here, even though I haven't had a chance to read them all. But if you have, okay, so there's a few questions. Robert is saying, what practice do you recommend to enhance the soul on a daily basis? Oh, what a great question. For me, it's that getting still, getting quiet, and really listening to the voice of my inner self. What's important to me in that moment? And as I mentioned, if I'm not able to contact that, maybe using any one of the numerous range of different sort of tarot card-like things out there that can help us to create that relationship. Going out and being in a quiet place and tuning into the environment around me. You see, as soon as we get still, as soon as we get quiet, and the mental hypnotic pull eases, and we drop into that sense of self, then we're present with the totality of what it is. We're present with ourselves at that soul level. So quiet time every day, in my experience, is the best way to create that intimacy with self. And it's imperative in the world that we're living in right now that we create those times of quiet for ourselves, so we can have that authentic relationship that is not about relationship with any other than the true source of who we are. So great question. Thank you for that. And Dustin, you're saying, love these videos. I watch them again and again. Really helps me make positive change in my life. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad. Yay. Thank you for joining us. Going down to see what else do we have here. Tina, you're saying, thanks. Loved being part and taking the time to get calm space instead of reacting as parents. Wonderful. And just listening to you calms me. That's coming from Laura Clark Rose. I love that. Oh, I give thanks. Yes. And then Joan, you're saying, why is creating this quiet time so challenging? I know, right? It's our default has become that in that moment we go to some distraction instead, and we think that we're going to get some fulfillment from the distraction of whatever it may be. But actually the fulfillment comes when we can create that quiet time. So my recommendation to all of you is that you make a statement of your quiet time to yourself and to your immediate family members, especially obviously if you live with other people. This is your designated quiet time, and so that they understand and they respect it and they can support you in it. Because the moment you get support on it, that's wonderful. If you're a parent and you can make that relationship with your significant other, and you can make the relationship to support each other in that quiet time that you so desperately need, and you can communicate the value of it to your children, that's really fantastic. So thank you for that. And then Jennifer, you're saying, sometimes I recommend doing practices for 40 days straight for optimal results, yet there are so many delicious practices to engage in. How do you strike a balance? Yeah, isn't that funny? It's just, what I would say is, if there's something that you're working through, that you're aware that you're working through. For example, when we went through all of those questions to analyze yourself, if you like, if you're aware that there's something that you really need to work through, that's a really good time to engage in a 40-day practice that deals specifically with that. And so that you the potential of that practice is exponentially increased as you do it on a daily basis. So that's what I would say. And then also, if you're looking to create, especially on the meditation level, if you're really looking to create that deeper level of recognition and awareness in your mind, it's much better to do the same meditation every day for 40 days, 90 days, 120 days, even 1,000 days, which is 3 years. It's much better to do the same thing every day for an extended period of time, because then you'll go through all the different sort of stages within the meditation process of being bored or being focused or getting it or not getting it. It's like there's a whole process that happens, and then we learn to just be steady and stable and witnessing throughout it all, if that makes sense. So those are a couple of clues for you there. And then William, you're saying, thank you for the beautiful reminders. Perfect timing. Great. I'm so glad. Yay. Marcella, so lovely to see you on here. Sending you so much love. And Adriana, hi. So nice to see you too. And you're saying that was awesome. Can't wait to be in your presence. I was browsing through my notes from your 200 hour and came across a quote from Tommy, which I love. Don't look for the answers in the mind level. Let's see if I can pull up. Just listen to your heart. The relationship with your heart is the most amazing love affair. Wonderful. I love that. I love that. And let's see if there's any here. So I love your engagement, you guys. Thank you for being who you are and being such beacons out there in the world. Just seeing, and if there's any other questions in here. Oh, there we go. Half your weight in ounces of water a day. Great. There's a big shout out for water, which I didn't recommend in terms of, keeping the body in balance, but hydration, that's such a huge one. So thank you, Valinda, for popping that one in there. Love it. Just seeing, befriend your soul. You guys are amazing. Oh, Jessica Grana, you are on here too. My amazing support back there. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys. Just a joy. Oh, Joan, you're saying here, what do you do if you are sick with a cold? Do you practice yoga? I have no energy. Great question. No, when you're sick with a cold, don't practice. Maybe go out for, a gentle little neighborhood walk or something, just to move your energy and get some fresh air, unless it's, super cold wherever you are. So no, don't practice, and don't try to do any pranayama, and rest, and let rest be your practice. You can still listen to mantra and use that as a way to be meditative. So yeah, when you have a cold, it's like your body is asking you to really rest and decompress. So finding ways that you can do that. Wonderful, great question. Nancy, you were saying thank you so much. I hope to do a retreat or training with you someday. I love your practice and presence. Oh, thank you. Well, I hope to meet you in the flesh at a retreat or training sometime soon. I have a few of those coming up. You guys can see them all on my website, kiamiller.com. I have a 200-hour happening in Asheville, North Carolina, which I'm really excited to be co-teaching with Sierra Hollister. She's a lovely teacher from that area. And it's really that idea that when two souls come together, the result of them being together is greater than the sum of the parts. So I'm excited to do this training with the two of us, and all of the different experiences that we've had with yoga, and we can share together. So that's in January for 10 days, and May in 10 days. And I have a mantra training in India coming up, and an immersion in Santa Cruz in May, April, if you guys are interested. One's on prana and pranayama, so understanding this energy component more, and then the next one's on mind and meditation, so obviously understanding that core relationship with your mind at a deeper level. So anyway, blessings to you all. So wonderful to be connected in this way, and I will be seeing you all again soon. So love and Sat Nam.